He goes, Kish, let's say you retire at 60. And he was like, fun fact, you're not going to be able to retire for your generation, but let's pretend like you can retire.
Right.
And he's like, you're 25. And I was like, yeah, I'm 25 and I've just missed out and I'm late to the party and I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, relax.
Today on the show, I'm talking with former D1 soccer player at University of California, Fullerton, assistant professor at Clemson University, and the founder of SportPhD. Dr. Rikishi Smith-Rey is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that helps make the sports world great. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Audible, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And please take a minute and leave the show a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps our show get discovered by others. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee. Get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Today's guest went from chasing soccer dreams in Southern California to shaping the minds of future athletes at Clemson. Her journey is all about passion, resilience, and growth. She's a former D1 soccer athlete, a first-generation college graduate, a Ph.D., a professor, and the founder of SportPhD and the Athlete Mindset, helping young female athletes learn how powerful they really are. I am so excited to welcome to the show Dr. Rikishi Smith-Rey. Hi, Kishi. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to dive into all the things that I've done in life, which is crazy to always reflect back on. And so tthank you so much for having me.
You are absolutely welcome. I always love to tell how I find people or how I know them. And I
Yeah.
literally, I think that because LinkedIn can be like, a rabbit hole sometimes. And so I think I was looking at somebody's profile and it always says people that they suggest.
Yeah.
And I always look for like D1 athletes or something like that. And I saw yours and I clicked on your LinkedIn profile and I was like, this is really cool. This is very interesting. I'm going to reach out, and you graciously accepted my invite. And I'm so excited about that. So it's, one thing that I love about doing these podcasts is I really get to meet all these really interesting people, that have had these amazing journeys, whether they feel like it or not. But it's just, I love people's lives. I just love how they get from point A to point B. It's just really fascinating in everything that you're doing. Okay, so tell us currently, like, where you are and what you do for a living currently.
Yeah, I am in Clemson, South Carolina now, born and raised in Southern California, so very, very far away from home. But this is year 4 here, and I absolutely love it. It's incredible. It's been a wonderful change. And I work here at Clemson University. I'm in the communication department, but specifically I do sport communication. My research kind of intersects health and sport. And so I teach a lot of the health communication classes, and I do a lot of the sport communication classes.
So tell me, because this just popped into my head and kind of how it goes sometimes. So tell me, like, what is health communication?
Yeah, so specifically with health communication, in my facet of how I look at it, I do a lot of research on concussions for athletes, how they disclose it, when they have a concussion, what are their fears, what are their barriers to disclosing it, and the communication realm around that. Some of my research has also looked at body image for female athletes. One of my favorite things that I've looked at is how does the communication that you grow up with, and then specifically in college from coaches, from teammates, from seeing teammates, how does that translate into your body image ideas that you have of yourself? It's so interesting. We play our entire life and you're, the most fit you probably ever will be. I used to joke about that all the time. It's like this, it's never going to get any better than this.
That's right.
And then how do you mentally transition out of that? And oftentimes, especially for females, a lot of my work does kind of always go back to female athletes, is how do we support them for afterwards when they've had a coach or they've had teammates always working out with them, and then they have to go to a class by themselves or they have to work out by themselves. How do they motivate themselves? Are they motivated, or are they like, I will never work out ever again? So that research was really fun. So that's kind of how the health connects into it, just health concepts. And then again, oftentimes in sport.
Right. When I initially saw that, and this may be, and I'm gonna put myself on display here. When I initially read that, when I see communication, I think, oh, she writes things like, like PR kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so some of my listeners may have been thinking the same thing, and so that's why I'm glad that I asked that.
Thank you.
You speak about the body image, which we're going to get into a little bit later in the show, but a lot of my female guests have talked about their love-hate relationship with their body, and how hard it was in their sport, and um, just all of the trials and tribulations with trying to keep their weight down for their sport, and how they viewed their body. And also you talked about how to transition out of that after they stopped competing competitively, and that's been a big thing. Like, they have this love-hate relationship with exercise, and they're not really sure what to do, which has
Yes.
been interesting. The men have talked about that as well, like how
I was
to.
just, the study actually came from me being with a friend who he was a D1 athlete. He went and played
Right,
professionally afterwards. And we used to always joke that he had like, and not to dismiss it at all, but like
right,
body dysmorphia. We're like,
yeah,
you're fine. And he's like, no, no,
yeah,
no, I gotta go work out. I have to go eat properly. And so it's not to say that the men don't deal with it at all
exactly,
either. They do too. And it's something that's not really talked about, of how you transition the athlete body after performing for your entire life to then being, in your life, and what that looks
right,
like. So it's really, I would say the communication side is always, it's kind of like the PR. I do, I focus on the strategic messaging. I
right,
really, and this is kind of where we'll touch on it, SportPhD came from, of how do you take our research and then make it meaningful, and
sure,
help the athletes afterwards, and take our finding and be like, translate it into something that they can grapple with, so that their lives are a little bit better and more fun, and that they love it as much
yeah.
as we did, but have a little bit extra help along the way.
Well, exactly, and it's just a whole other conversation, and I may even have you back just to talk about that specifically for a long time. So let's really get into. You said you grew up in Southern California, born and raised there, right?
Born and raised my entire life. So grew up in the San Fernando Valley,
Mhm.
specifically Chatsworth. Grew up the entire time there. When I was looking to go into college, I actually loved photography. So it was in between a photography school or going and playing college soccer. And I realized I can always go back to photography, and I can't go back to soccer. So I made a good decision there. And then I went to Cal State Fullerton, which is now on the map because Love Island this last year had someone from Cal State Fullerton.
See,
So
and
now when I say
I don't even watch that,
now when I
but
say Cal State Fullerton, they're all like, "Oh, I know where that is." I'm like, thank goodness. So I went to Cal State Fullerton. I played for 4.5 years there. I redshirted my freshman year. I had a really interesting, weird injury my freshman year, so I redshirted then. And then afterwards, I coached out. I was in Orange County for the rest of the
right,
remainder of the time. I coached some of the highest levels in soccer, which was really fun. I had a girls team from the age they were 10 all the way into 16 until I moved out here.
right.
And so I'm still in touch with a lot of them today. And then did my master's at Cal State Fullerton as well. And then I completed my PhD at Chapman University. And that's when I got called by Clemson. And they always joke that if Clemson calls, you answer. And I did. And I moved all the way out here again. Now I'm going into my 4th year and have loved every minute of the journey. And it has been a journey, and it's been wonderful. It's been a really, really good journey.
So I want to really dive into one question is like, when did soccer really like enter your life, and how
Ooh.
did it?
Um, so I have an older sister. She's 8 years older than my twin and I. So I have a twin brother. And she was playing soccer. We were actually born on her birthday. So there's three of us on one day, 8 years
Oh my God.
apart. Wild.
Makes your mom either crazy or
Oh,
happy, right?
both at the same time. Um, and so my older sister was put into soccer. It was back before soccer was actually really that big, I would say, especially for women and for females. And so she was playing in the backyard, and my parents just said like, you would not allow her to be in the backyard without you playing. And so
Right.
I do give her a little bit of credit for that. And then I started playing ASO when I was 4. Back then, club soccer didn't really exist. It was just starting up, and there was like a big
Right.
battle between ASO and club. But I loved it. I mean, I did not miss a practice. I was that kid that I talked soccer, I lived soccer. It was everything to me. And so my mom recognized that and put me in club. And so I was 7 years old playing with 10-year-olds because that was like the lowest age group. Now we have club
Right.
soccer for
Right.
4-year-olds.
Now, for those out there, club soccer is more of like what we would call AAU or something like that, where it's the more competitive.
More competitive. Think
Yeah.
of
Okay.
like baseball, it's travel.
Yes. Got it. Got it.
Football, but it's that
Right.
travel you're paying to play.
Yes.
I mean, we went across the United States to
So at
play.
7 years old, you started that.
Yeah, I did, and I loved it.
Did you, was there any other sport that you even considered playing?
Never. And that's the interesting thing too, because there is a lot of research on playing multiple sports. I
Right.
was that lucky one where it was soccer or nothing, and I never questioned if I wanted to play anything else.
When did you ever, like, was there a moment when you were like, I'm really good? Or did that moment ever come where you could just
Great question.
acknowledge that yourself?
Um, that's a great question. I remember I actually had a coach and he pulled me aside. His name was Marwan Assad, and I was playing for a club team, and he pulled me aside and he was like, Kishi, and I played center mid. And he was like,
Right.
Kishi, I'm building this team around you, and this is what I need from you. And I was about
How old
11
were you?
years old.
11? Wow.
Yeah, and so it was just when we were like 11v11 at that time, so full field. And he was like, this team, and I always say the center midfielder is kind of like the quarterback. So anyone who knows
Right.
football, you're like, oh, you're running the show. The tempo is from you. And I remember being like, okay, like this is awesome. And I remember going home to my mom, and she's been so supportive my entire life with it. And then I was that kid that like, if I wasn't doing homework, I was out in the front yard practicing something. Like I was
Right.
always with a soccer ball, and that really encouraged me, just having someone who believed in me. So
Sure.
at that point, I was like, oh, okay, this could be something.
Right. Um, what did, when you were going into your high school years, from everything you sent to me, you were also playing club soccer during high school as well? Okay. So how did you navigate? Because the high school years are tough. You're a teenager and a teenage girl. So
Yeah.
how did you handle that balance between playing for your high school, playing club soccer, and then being a teenage girl?
Yeah. I would have to say I'm probably not the typical teenage girl. And so I do encourage, like, whenever I'm coaching, I'm like, go be a kid, like, go out and
Yes,
have fun. Like, please be a kid. You don't get those years back at all. You don't. You grow up.
exactly.
And so I was the typical, like, I went to high school soccer, and then if I could, I'd go to club soccer afterwards, and then I'd come home and I would do my homework and I would do it over again. Um, I didn't know any different, and so it just was life. However, I was also the kid that as a first generation college student and student athlete, I did know that if I didn't get a college scholarship, I was not going to college.
Right,
And
right,
so I had a goal in mind and it was all directed towards there. And so, I mean, for the best purposes, it kept me out of trouble. I never did
mm,
anything that I was like, this might jeopardize my ability to
right,
play. And it was a lot of prioritization. I missed a lot of birthdays and a lot of things like
yeah,
that, which is really, really hard in teenage years. And I remember having that inner struggle of like, I really want to go to this birthday party or this party or do this concert on the weekend, but I have soccer. But I kept on telling myself like it's something that got me through the PhD program, something my master's advisor told me. It's like it's worth it in the end. So kind of
sure.
continuously looking at like it's gonna be worth it. It's gonna pay off to work really hard in these moments. And then I had a great again, my mom's one of my best friends. She was
Right,
wonderful. I have a twin brother. So I had friends. And my teammates became best
sure.
friends. And so I
Yes,
was with them all the time and traveling. So when you're traveling, you're in a hotel with 12
yes,
other girls. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And so I didn't feel at any point like I was missing out, which was nice. I didn't go to any dances though, which I
right.
regret. So if you're watching and you're a kid, go to the dance. You will be fine. Go play the next day. You will be okay. You can do it all. You really can.
And it's interesting because you talked about, your team becomes your family. And I think that for team sports, that's a good plus, right? And you think about the athletes out there that, like a track person who maybe, yes, they have a team around them, but it's more of a solo sport. And even swimming, or diving or some of those things, it becomes more of a solo thing
Yeah.
than, you're working as a team together. Um, where do you think you got that focus from? You're a child, and did it come from your parents? Did it come from people around you? Like, where do you think that drive came from? Real talk. I want to help more people like you show up online with confidence, starting with your LinkedIn profile. If your profile still reads like a job history instead of a reflection of who you are now, we need to fix that. I offer a LinkedIn makeover service where I rewrite your headline, your about section, and your experience to tell your story in a way that gets noticed, that showcases your expertise. It's personal, it's real, and it's all about helping you stand out for the right reasons. Book your makeover at sandy-adams.com/LinkedIn, and let's get your profile working for you.
People around me, definitely. Again, being someone where I knew if I wanted to go to college, I had to have a soccer scholarship. I didn't have much growing up, and I remember seeing parents and hearing about their trip to whatever
Yeah,
place, and seeing the life that they had built. And it was a wonderful opportunity to see something different from my lifestyle, and I'm so
right,
fortunate for it, that if I trace it, it's like I wouldn't have been able to see that there was what there was had I not had sports. So I mean, I give
right,
sport all the credit, and seeing those parents and being like, okay, there are goals and there are things that I can do to change the circumstances that I didn't choose as a child. And my mom was always, I keep on going back to her. She was really the one that was like, Kishi, you want to do it, I'll make it work. We couldn't afford club soccer. And she was like,
right,
everything that I can't afford to put into it, we will. And I was very fortunate. I was on scholarship for club soccer. And so to see other individuals at such a young age have a lifestyle, which is odd, because like
right.
what 5-year-old, 8-year-old is looking at lifestyles. Um, I will like, I know that. Um, I just, at that moment, I was like, okay, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really hard. And there's going to be a lot of failures and like moments where I didn't make it work and it wasn't what I wanted it to, but that's life. And I learned that
Right.
pretty quick. And so it just instilled in me this goal set mentality that really allowed me to achieve what I've achieved today. Cause I think I've pushed that into my master's and my PhD.
Right.
And then just, I mean, I think all of us, not all of us, but many of us are somewhat of a people pleaser. And so
Yeah.
as much as my mom never forced me to play sports, I always like wanted to make her happy too. And I know that if she doesn't have to pay for college, like that's great. And so there was a small part
Sure.
of there was a large part of intrinsic motivation, but there was a small part of like extrinsic motivation where I was like, I'm gonna
Right.
do that so my mom doesn't have to worry about it, which is great.
So in your high school years, when did you start getting recruited by colleges?
When was that? It was a little different back. It's so different now.
It's
Um,
very different now.
oh my goodness. A lot older than what they're dealing with now. Probably going into my junior year, I started
Okay.
getting recruited out of state. Um, I had always dreamed about like going and playing in Holland and playing overseas.
Right.
But I have a younger brother, and at that time, the home life wasn't great. And so going out of state just became, as much as it was like I'm gonna be able to go play there and move there and start a new life. I couldn't. My younger brother's 7 years younger than us, and so there was a little bit of responsibility of being able to
Sure.
take care of him too.
Right.
So um, those offers were great, and it gave me the confidence of like, okay, there's going to be a place here that I'm going to be able to go to. And so Cal State Fullerton is only an hour drive from my
Right.
hometown. And so it allowed me to, once I got started getting recruited by them, I realized, okay, I'm close enough to home that if he calls, I can be there.
Yeah.
My mom, someone needs me. I can be there in a little bit. So that kind of determined it.
Sure.
Now, do I wish I would have gone out of state and done the whole entire college? Like Cal State Fullerton's a commuter school. I didn't commute, but like the big old college and things like that. Every once in a while, I
Yeah,
think about it, but it gave me the path. Again, it's always that weird balance of like, but it gave me everything I have. But if I
exactly.
knew, would I have changed anything?
Yeah,
And I don't know if I would have, but it was a perfect option for me at the
right.
time for what I needed.
And people, it's easy to look back and say, I wish I had done this or that, whatever. I grew up, so I'm in Memphis, and I grew up in a small town just 2 hours from here. Um, and I had the dream of going to SMU in Dallas or coming to Memphis. And obviously, Memphis was a lot less expensive for a school. But for me, it was far enough away that I was away, and it was close enough that I could still, if I needed to go home, I could. If my mom needed to come see me, she could. And yeah, I get that. And I've had other athletes on here who have talked about, and I think even here, when I hear athletes being recruited these days, some of them are talking about how they pick the school so that their parents can actually come see them play.
Yeah.
Whereas especially with the conference realignments and stuff, a lot of the conferences, the schools are like opposite sides of the country,
Yes.
and those parents are never going to be able to afford to fly to every game. And so, I've heard a lot of people that have talked about that, just picking a school because it's closer to home,
And
and they
I think it
thinking about their
depends too,
parents.
like what are your goals afterwards? If it's to play professionally, yeah,
Yes.
that might trump, sorry
Right.
parents, I love you, watch it
Yes.
online type
Yes.
of thing.
Right.
Versus I was very mindful the women's league didn't really exist. It kind of did, and then my senior year it folded that year, so your only option was to go play overseas, and I was like, I'm gonna get started with my life. So it wasn't even, but like now for these girls and these women, they have the option of
Yeah.
playing professionally. And so that's a whole nother level of processing for 16 and 17-year-olds to
Yeah.
make. And it's
It
just
is.
wild.
It is. I've had at least two girls on here already that have played, even if it was for a year, they've played overseas pro soccer. And that's good. So obviously you picked Cal State Fullerton. Going into that, what was your thought process about after college? Like, did you have anything as you're entering as a freshman in college? Were you thinking about like were you being intentional about your degree choice, and were
No,
you thinking about life after college?
no, not
No.
at all. And I regret that. And it's something I advise. I had a meeting with a high school student athlete yesterday. I was breaking down the D1, D2, D3,
Yeah.
and talking about, right, so often, and this is my point of view, 100%, thing in D1, you're so caught up in just the sport at that moment and playing and getting playing time and continuing on. And you don't really think, well, what's afterwards? And I knew I
Yeah.
liked writing. I kind of knew I liked communication. I was like, I really like psychology. My route into academia and like what I mastered and did my PhD in is kind of all over the place. Um, but I never once thought about it. And now I tell my students that all the time. I tell my students that, I tell my girls that I mentor. It's something to think about. It's something to think
Yeah.
about. And again, I always love the analogy of working backwards. Like, what is your goal? And then what do you have to do to achieve that?
Right.
Because I did it for soccer and I didn't do it for anything else in my life until I like realized like you got to do something. And then my master's and my PhD. But it took me some years to realize that life afterwards doesn't just happen. I do think it's a disservice that we tell athletes oftentimes is like, you're a college athlete, you're gonna get a job anywhere you want.
No,
And
it
I'm
is
like,
not the
no. And
case.
I graduated and I had zero experience. And I was like, but I have a degree and I played college soccer. And people are like, that's cute. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like,
It's
I
true, but that's the reality.
true. And like when we don't tell student athletes, and I think Clemson does a great job, they have the ability to offer student athletes internships. So they're
Yeah.
doing internships as they're doing their athletics and their schooling. So they're thinking about jobs afterwards. And there's a young woman here. She would be amazing for this podcast. Her name's Tori
Uh,
Neiman. She played Division I basketball. She does all of our athlete development now, and her and I work.
Let's get her on here.
Yes, I mean, I always joke, I'm like, I want to be you when I grow up, Tori. She provides for all of our student athletes. They do mock interviews, they learn how to dress, they do etiquette dinners, they do so much to prepare these athletes for afterwards. And it's funny because you can see the athletes, and I mean, we've all been that age of like, okay, and not all of them, but there's going to be a day where they're going to be like, actually, I do remember this. Thank you, Tori Neiman. Like, you've made a difference by preparing them in some small way. And so I regret it. It does work out still. I'm very fortunate, but I wish I would have thought about that when I was playing and was more intentional about my route. Did it all work out? Yes. And looking back, so much of how it worked out wouldn't have had I known this was my route. But I wish I would have been like, this is what I'm doing. But who knows? I was 17 going into college.
Right.
I was a young one.
You know, and it's difficult, as we talked about at that age, it's difficult to try to figure out like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life, you know? And, you know, what I see is that, you know, especially 16, 17, 18 years old, especially if you think there's a path to play pro sports, you don't want to think about anything else because that might mean you're never going to make it as a pro.
Yes.
What I see is I think that's more so for the men than the women.
We're getting there for the women.
Yes.
Luckily.
Yes.
Athletes Unlimited, I always preach their story. They have volleyball, lacrosse, softball right now, I think maybe basketball, and they are creating just such a wonderful opportunity for women to be able to play in the States too. And we have a women's soccer league. And so when I do talk to some of the student athletes, I volunteer with Tori a lot. I have student athletes in my class. I have interns as well. The women are starting to be like, I want to play pro afterwards. I'm like, yes. Okay, what else after that? But yes, like let's goals too. And so it is really fun to see how it's changed for women's sports and the support that they get. But then also telling them like, there's a time, like just your body alone, whether you make the team and professionally or not. I mean, I'm in my 30s now. When I wake up, I'm like, oh, my knee and my back. So there's a time and place where your body's not going to be able to do it anymore. Sure. What do you want? What do you want your life to look like?
Right. And you know, I would love to see, you know, the young women experience life. You know, go out and see the world. And I just had the daughter of a really good friend of mine. She was at University of Nebraska at Omaha, and she's playing basketball. And she actually just got a position overseas. So she's in, I think, Bulgaria playing basketball. This is week 1 that she's been over there. I don't think she's ever been out of Nebraska. And, you know, I just look at her at like, this is such an opportunity because you may never get this again, you know, as you get as you get older, as you get older, you know, I think back, I was very fortunate when I was in my 20s and 30s to travel a lot. And I did my graduate degree in education. And so I did my student teaching in Europe. I took a 6-week option through University of Memphis and did it in Europe. And so thankful. Did it get me a job? No, but so thankful because a lot of the times when we do things, we're getting so much more experience than what we may have intentionally been doing it for. And I say, experience is never, like it's never not a good option if you've got good experience out there. All right, before we get into the next topic, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about something that can really help you level up your personal brand. I've created an exclusive new book called The Visionary Personal Brand Playbook. It's perfect for those of you who have big goals but aren't exactly sure how to make your brand stand out or, for that matter, where to even start. It's packed with actionable tips that you can start using right now, today. If you're interested, head over to my website at sandy-adams.com/playbook and grab your copy. Now back to the show.
I always encourage traveling. So in between graduating from my undergrad and going back for my master's, I took 4 years off and became a professional wedding photographer. What I wanted to do.
So what was interesting is I've been a portrait photographer. So
Oh,
I think that was
incredible.
one of
Yeah.
the things
You're
when
like,
I
you get it.
when I saw your thing, I'm like, oh my God, like this is so interesting. So okay, I don't want to jump ahead. So let's talk about okay, so college, and you said you had an injury.
Oh,
Was it in
yes.
was it in
Oh,
college or high school?
both. It started in high school. I was walking, we could wear sandals in our high school, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I'm walking on the outside of my foot. And I rotated in and couldn't put pressure on like right below my big toe, like the ball of my foot. And I was like,
Right.
oh my goodness, like what is that? And I went in and I had completely shattered my sesamoid bones. I think like
Which is the
so
joint.
underneath the ball of your foot, you have these floating bones, and don't know what it
Didn't
means.
know that.
Yep. And so it actually, this is such a weird story, but I was really into the Lakers growing up. I think it was Luke Walton at the same time that I did the same exact injury and was out. And I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is a real injury. Like you can't push off of your foot. And so it was,
Right.
it absolutely didn't shatter me, but it was something where I was like, I'm not indestructible. Like there are injuries that occur in
Yes.
sport. It was really kind of my first one. I had like broken my thumb before, but it was like my first injury that impacted soccer. When I broke
Right.
my thumb, I like just took the cast off myself and I was like, I don't need a thumb to play soccer. And so for this one, I was like, oh, I need my feet to play. And so the doctors were like, take some time off. And I would put a boot on and then I would take it off to go play. And I would put a boot on during the day and I would take it off to go play.
Ah,
And so it never healed. And then once I got into college, throughout double days and everything like that, I just got back to the point where like it was hurting my entire foot, and I ended up having to have surgery.
mm,
Um, September coming in, I was very fortunate. Our coaches are wonderful, and he would come next to me like, "I wish you were playing right now," which is good and bad as a 17-year-old because I was like, "Yeah, me too," and there's nothing I can do about it right now. So I redshirted that year, which again, I was on the younger side going into college. I couldn't even sign my documents. I turned 18 in October. So like from July until October, I was calling my
right.
mom, can we please email this to you and can you sign it? Which was a lot. Questions about identity. You've just moved to a new place.
Yeah.
You are trying to make friends. You're trying to be included into a team and you can't practice. You're in a like all of those things really weigh on you as a student athlete. And then unfortunately that just kind of rolled into like I think that so often we see if you get injured like that, it does roll into other injuries sometimes.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where I felt like I was just dealing with something almost every year, and that weighs on you too. And so once it came time for like soccer to be done, there was a part of me that was like, my body just can't take it anymore. I mean, I had been
Right.
doing it since I was 4. And so it's a really, really hard place to be in as an athlete, to have your identity kind of shaped and molded, and something you have to work through of it being in an injury and not being
For
like the
sure.
best one on the field or the captain. You're the injured one at times, and that's just a really hard thing to grapple with.
Well, and not only that, I mean, from a person who has been very active to have this injury and you just got there and you can't be active, you can't participate. And it has to be a very daunting feeling of, not only that, like I can't be part of it and just watch, or and focus on your own rehab. It has to be very mentally challenging.
And it is mentally,
Yeah.
it is, you question, what did I do wrong? How could I have prevented this? It's weird. And I don't know if it's an everyone thing, but you get into this place, or I will speak on me. I
Right,
got into this
right.
place of like, am I making this up? Like, is this, and I've talked to other athletes before and they're like, oh no, I've thought that too. Like, am I crazy? Is
Yeah.
this something I should have played through? So you have so much self-doubt going on too, that like, was I just not strong enough to push through it? And you're like, no, you have to like, you're constantly trying to balance the rational side of your
Right.
brain of like, no, 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 you literally couldn't push off, to the irrational side of your brain where it's like, what's wrong with you? Just play. Like, you don't need your foot. And it's a really, really weird balance that you're having to learn while
Right.
balancing relationships in school and everything like that.
We had I had a track star on here, and she talked about in high school she had, I wouldn't say a phantom injury. It was a real injury, but her teammates didn't think she was telling the truth and they started bullying her. And it made her high school years very difficult. And when she got to college, it was better because they, you're changing the atmosphere of who
Yeah.
you're around. But it is things like that, whether they believe it or not, it cannot sometimes it can work opposite. Sometimes people can be against you for what, why aren't you out here helping us, if we're not playing well or something like that. Um so you're in college and you're going through these 4 years because you were at Fullerton for 4 years, correct?
Yes.
um and you're being dogged by this, like, so when you graduated college, what was your goal then? Had you already decided you were going to stop playing?
Yeah.
What Okay.
Yeah. So I had a pretty serious concussion my junior year.
Okay.
And it's kind of led into why I research it now. Um, that I mean, after I had like short-term memory loss. I wasn't like remembering who my friends were. It was like pretty bad. Um, and then my senior year, it turned into like anytime I headed the ball or got hit in the head by anything,
Right.
it was like instant issues. I would be
Right.
nauseous right away. I'd be throwing up. And then my senior year training, I was sprinting down the field and my whole entire right leg went numb. I was like, that's odd. And I went to my
That's
athletic
very
trainer and I was like, hey, I'm running and my whole leg is going numb. And they're like, oh, you've tied your cleats too tight. It's like, I've been playing
I
my
don't think
entire
so.
life. I think I know how to tie my cleats. Thank you very much. And it's stuff like that where you're like, oh, maybe I am. Like maybe I don't know how to tie my cleats and you start self-doubting. And I was like, no, that's a pretty big thing. Um, and so right after my senior year, I ended up getting an MRI and I had two slip discs and it was all of this like it so really my body was like, you're not doing this anymore.
Right.
And at the same time, it wasn't the WPSL, I forget what it was called for women. It collapsed my senior year. And so all
Okay.
of us who were gonna go into any sort of pool to try to play were told you play overseas or you're done. And I
Wow.
mean, I was like, I'm not ready. It's
Yeah.
time. And so it kind of made the decision for me, which was nice because that transition's really hard. It wasn't to say it wasn't hard because soccer and school ended all at once. I graduated, I stopped playing soccer, and that was it. That was,
So it's interesting because that's really how the podcast got started. A former Memphis basketball player, he'd played for the Harlem Globetrotters for 10 years.
love it.
And we met through, because I am on the booster club for the men's basketball team here. And so he had reached out to me and he's like, I'd love to start this podcast. During COVID, all of my Globetrotter friends, we were getting together and we were talking about how difficult that transition is, whether it's your choice or not.
Mhm.
And he said, I think this is a conversation. And so we started the podcast. And I'm like, I've never played sports at all, but I do career strategy and things like that. And I found it, and I love sports. And so he stepped back and left the show. And I decided to continue on because I'd had so many of the people on here say, I felt like I was in a therapy session and I loved it. And I felt people wanted to talk about their struggles and they wanted to tell their story, just the everyday average athlete, and um, it had, I try to, I compare this to, just people in career period, I lived in Houston for a number of years and I worked with a nonprofit there and we did a job search for mid-level professionals. So we had so many engineers that were losing their job because of the up and down swing of the oil and gas industry. And so I would have these really intelligent, experienced engineers in front of me who did not believe they had any value because they no longer had a job.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, it doesn't, and now still, it doesn't matter if you're an athlete or if you're, in a profession of something that's not a sport. When you spend your whole life doing one thing and it all ends, like, how do you get back up the next day? How do you pivot? How do you turn your life around? How do you start believing in yourself? And how do you get your self-confidence back? So what were those first 6 months like for you after all of that ended?
Yeah, it is a lot of self-doubt, a lot of self-reflection of trying to figure out, where did I go wrong? Because I should have something right now.
Right.
I had a lot of friends who either kind of knew they wanted to do teaching and went straight into teaching. And I
Right.
tried that and realized thought I wanted to be a high school teacher and I didn't, which is crazy that I went to college afterwards, which that is distinctly different. It is one of those where you have to self-reflect on how did you get to where you just left? And so oftentimes we don't talk about the process. We just talk about the end goal. We just talk about like,
Exactly.
you were
Exactly.
there and you made it. And you forget all the times you didn't go to the concert, and you forget all the
Right.
nights that you went out in the front yard and practiced and worked towards something. And so it became one of those things of like, well, what is the next goal then? If you don't have a goal and you're not going through a process, that's where I struggled the most. And through self-reflection, I realized sports had ingrained in me the ability, which is phenomenal, to
Sure.
find a goal and work towards something. And so that's actually when the whole wedding photography came in. And so those 6 months were like, okay, what are you going to do? And I worked at Lululemon and I did a little bit of accounts payable for a company. And then I had met someone who was doing photography, and I kind of gave them my story of like, I love photography. I always did. Was gonna choose it, didn't. And they were like, if you want to come on, we'll teach you everything we know. And luckily, with things that are more creative, I always argue you kind of have it or you don't. You can either grab that
Exactly.
moment. I can teach you all of the settings, and you can know
Yes.
all the settings. But if you don't have it, that's really
If you
hard to.
can't see, if you just can't see it, and I've seen so many times, um, and I hate to call out the men, but I'll see a man who's picked up a camera, read all the books, knows the technical part of it,
Yep.
but their images just don't.
You're a second off.
Yes.
Photography, there's a
Yes.
second where that's the photo,
Yes.
and one
Yes.
second later, you missed it. And
Right.
it's really hard to teach that to someone. And
You
so
cannot teach that. You
can't
cannot teach that.
you can't teach feeling. Like it's a feeling that you get with this photo versus this photo. And so luckily I had that. And so they're like, you're good. Like we'll teach you. And within that, then I realized like, okay, now I have a new goal. Work towards that. And I just consistently was like, if I don't have something to work on, that's when I struggle and that's when I'm
Sure.
at my
Sure.
worst. And so I did that for 3.5, 4 years. And to tie it back into traveling, that's when I grew up. I mean, I'm from a generation where we didn't have maps on our phone. So when you got lost, you printed out MapQuest, and if you got lost, your
I
ass
didn't even have MapQuest. Let me tell you, we had the book of maps. Okay.
what was that called? It was
The
underneath
word
the
that, like,
seat.
the road atlas thing, like you,
Yes,
this huge book, and you pull it
book,
out.
and you're flipping through the pages.
Yes. Trying to
That
find
was
the
that.
state. Yes.
Yes. And so I remember being in college and like we got lost and I had to ask for directions and I rolled my window down. It was this sweet older lady and I just started crying and I was like, I can't do it. I used to
Oh
be
my
so
God.
shy. And so then with photography, I was very fortunate of being good. And I mean, I traveled around the United States. I traveled into Europe. I shot in Italy and England and Ireland. And you're there by yourself with a little case of your photo equipment. You got some C stands and you're trying to find your way. And
Yeah.
it really pushed me out of my comfort zone to realize like, okay, you can do this. People aren't so scary. I always say people are inherently good. I've met people that I've never spoken to in my entire life and never spoken to afterwards who have
Yes.
helped me
Yes.
find a bus station, or I had a family in Ireland invite me into their home because our key said diesel, which the car did not take diesel. And so we put into a stop in front of a house. And this mom
Uh,
and dad were like, come on in, we'll make you some tea and cookies at like midnight in Ireland. And afterwards, they're like, we have a daughter. We get this. Like, just
yeah.
take care of the people around you. And so I really grew up at that time.
Yeah.
and I became very good at it. I was very fortunate. And then I was like, well, what's the next goal then? And I got bored and I was like, oh, that's also
So,
not a good place to be in either.
so how did you get bored? Because I mean, you're traveling all over the country,
I
right? And across the globe.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, I have to ask this question. Nobody else may care. Was someone booking the weddings for you? Were you working for another photographer or were you getting the bookings yourself?
Both. So I was working for a company,
Okay.
but I was getting, so they were booking through and I would be through every single process, meeting with them beforehand, telling what our spiel was, going and doing their engagement shoot, being flown out to the wedding, doing all of that. I think I got bored and I recognize it now because it became monotonous. It became
Mm,
every bride wanted this photo. And every day was the same. You did the getting ready photos, you took the grooms out, they did this shot, and you did this shot. And like every once in a while, you'd have something a little bit more fun. Um, but I just got to the point where I was like, there's nothing new now, which is
right.
again,
It's just repetitive.
it's just repetitive. And
Different
so,
location, same process.
same exact thing every single time. And it was
And
weird
you're there by yourself.
by
Like
myself.
that's no fun.
Thank you for recognizing that. That was
No,
one of the
that's
hardest parts.
yeah.
You were like, you're
Yeah.
traveling everywhere. And I was like, yeah, I was very fortunate. I shot a wedding in Oxford. Um, and I remember,
England, not Mississippi.
yeah, Oxford, England. And I remember one, I was there for 5 days, taking buses by myself, carrying all my equipment by myself. You're not, as much as you're friends with the bride and groom, you're not friends. You don't know
You're still their photographer. You're
you're still
still
their photographer.
yes, yes.
You're working. And on my last day, I'm a big Arsenal fan. I have like an Arsenal stadium right here, who is in London, England. I was like, I'm not too far away from there. I'm gonna go there. And I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and walked the streets of Oxford, and it was this really weird realization of how much I loved it and how lonely I was at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have anyone to share this with. And I was like, I can post it on Instagram and I'll get 100 likes. And I'm like,
Right.
no one's here to be like, did you see that sunrise through the street? And like now when I go back, I try to bring people back to Oxford for that moment. And you can't
Yes.
make that moment up again. And it was just in that moment. And that became hard. And then it became hard of like, I had this inner battle of like, will you ever find anything? If there's something wrong with you. Like you've
No.
done this, you became a professional photographer, you should be loving this. And I'm like, am I not grateful for it? And again, I kept on forgetting and then coming back to of this idea of like, you really love the process of things. Like you have to
Mm,
be in a
yes.
profession where you're constantly doing that process and your goal is kind of constantly moving. And luckily through growing up, I found that out because 17-year-old me
Yeah.
would have never known that. And then that's what made me go back and do my master's was I realized I needed a new goal and I needed something that was going to, keep me working towards something. And I had really great advice from, his name's David Christian. He was an undergrad teacher of mine that we always kept in touch. I was 25 and I had just gotten back from shooting a wedding for a week in Italy. And I was like, I think I'm done. I think that I was so lonely there. And I sat down at lunch with him and I was like, what do I do with my life? I'm too old to go back to school. And he's like, and he goes, Kish, he goes, let's say this. Let's say you
I
retire.
love that. Quiche. I love that. Okay.
If you know me, call me Kish. He goes, Kish, let's say you retire at 60. He was like, fun fact, you're not going to be able to retire for your generation, but let's pretend like you can retire.
Right.
And he's like, you're 25. And I was like, yeah, I'm 25 and I've just missed out and I'm late to the party and I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, relax. He's like,
You're
let's
late to the
say,
party.
yeah. He's like, let's say you find your career job at 30. He's like, you're going to be doing that job for the next 30 years
Right.
of your life. He's like, you haven't done anything for 30 years. You're not 30. And he's like, and let's take the first 15 years off the table because you were just growing up, you were a kid. He's like, so you've been doing something for 10 years, and that's being generous because half of that was spent at school and in college. He was like,
Right.
imagine you find your career job at the age of 30. He's like, you're going to be doing that for the next 30 years. He's like, take the next 5 years to figure out what you want to do. Go back to school, see if that's what you want. And so I went back to my master's at Cal State Fullerton, and I had a teacher walk in and I was like, you and I are going to be friends. And he goes, I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. And I go, you and I are really going to be friends. I had loved Tennessee. And he was
Wait a
just,
minute. When were you in Tennessee?
so I would just travel to Knoxville. It was like, it sounds weird, but it just always felt like home without me going back to home and having that like struggle with it. And so I'd go to Nashville with friends and Knoxville. So when he walked in, he's like, I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I was like, you are the coolest person ever. And I want to be you when I grow up. And so he was like, look, I got a PhD and if you want to research. And so he brought me on to some research and I was like, this is fun. And he studied sport communication. And he was like, you can research this from someone who played the sport and be an advocate for them.
Right.
And so serendipitously, Chapman was opening up a PhD program right when I was finishing my master's, which I kind of alluded to beforehand in my undergrad, not knowing had it all worked out. His name's Zach Johnson. Zach Johnson would not have been at Cal State Fullerton. He wasn't there yet.
Right.
Chapman University didn't have their PhD program. I would have had to go out of state for that. Like it did all work out. I started studying sport communication research and concussions, and it's fun to be from an athlete side because I'm like, you can't just tell an athlete, tell your coach and sit out and you're fine. I'm like, they get kicked off the team. So being an advocate for what their real life experiences are is just so fun, and being like, I've been there. Yeah, I know I'm not just going to tell you to tell your athletic trainer you sprained your ankle and take 2 weeks off. So how do we educate them and allow them to make decisions with full knowledge? Because like I had the concussion, I always joke, like I would sign on the dotted line 10 out of 10 times again, even with that concussion, even with having to go back to doctors 5 years later and deal with it. It still gave me everything. Like I would still do college soccer, but I wish I would have known all of the facets of recovering from a concussion. I wish I would have been able to make the decision fully knowledgeable of what I was choosing. And so that's the fun part now, is that I get to help athletes be knowledgeable about what their choices are. You can choose it. I always like joke, I'm like, you're a big kid, you're an adult, you can choose it, but you need to know what your options are and why you're choosing it.
Sure. So how did sport PhD come about?
Yeah, sport PhD came from that. So when I was doing my master's and my PhD, I was coaching. I had a girls team. They were 10 when I got them. They were 05s, and then until I moved here. And so within my research, I was able to research and find things and then turn around and go to practice and work on it and be a mentor for them. And so when I came out here to Clemson, I was researching and I was like, I always feel bad saying this. It's not to be a slight on academia, but we publish in journals that in research that no one can understand. I'm like, no one knows what an ANOVA is and what I did here. And it's all of this jargon that the lay person doesn't know, or they can't get access to.
That's exactly right.
And so
exactly right.
Translational research, which I had a professor at Chapman do, I was like, this is interesting. It's so fascinating to me to take something that we in academia understand, that I can give to any one of my colleagues and they'd be like, yes. But if I gave it to a friend in my paper, they'd be like, Kish, I don't know what you did here. What did you
right over the head? Yeah.
Right over there. And I'm like, that's a disservice. If I'm trying to help you, and that's my goal, that's Kishi's goal, is to help the people that I'm researching. How do I do that? And so I have a great colleague here, Brandon Boatwright. Him and I were talking. He was like, well, what do you want to do with your research afterwards? And I was like, well, I study athletes. I found working with Tori Neiman, I love advising athletes and I love helping them. And so I was sitting on my couch one night and was like, let's just create a company. Why not? And so I was like, oh, I have a PhD. People are like, oh, you have a PhD. I'm like, yeah, I have a PhD. They're like, what's it in? And usually if I say communication, people are like, what?
See,
so, yeah. I'm like, what do you do? And PR? And I'm like, well, you can get one in PR, but no, that's not what I do. I do like strategic message design. Like, what's the best way for us to tell an athlete to report an injury so that they don't freak out? Like empathy and choice. We know that now through research.
Right.
Athletic trainers, like, I get it. I see you. Here's your options. Athletes are more likely to return back and tell you what's wrong afterwards. And so I was like, okay, well, basically I have like a PhD in sports. And I was like, oh, sport PhD, and my creative side came out. I went to
Oh,
Canva and I was like, sport PhD, that's kind of cool. And I was like, oh, I'll just do an LLC for it. And then I sat on it because I was like, this is dumb. This is stupid. No one cares. No one is going to want to be a part of it. You're not going to be able to do anything with it. And so that was 3 years ago. And then every year, not even every year, so often I'd be like, sport PhD, it's kind of cool. Well done, Kish. And then that'd be it.
let me pat myself on the back.
That could be something pretty interesting. And then once I moved out here, I didn't coach at all. I stopped coaching. And so my giving back to athletes turned into either volunteering with Clemson Athletics, which very fortunate to be able to do, or talking and like keeping my relationships with the girls that I used to coach. So a couple of them play college, a couple of them don't. They always call me, when break up with their boyfriend or the class is hard, and I love it. And I was like, yes. And when I was coaching them, I'd always have parents call me and be like, can you take so-and-so out to lunch? I know you're going to tell them what I'm telling them, but I know they'll listen to you and they're not.
Yes.
And we trust you. And I was like, that's cool. Like I have a head on my shoulders. I can challenge them and support them and say the same things their parents are saying, but they're going to listen and kind of get on the right foot of what they need to be dealing with. And so I kind of just kept on sitting with it and kept on sitting with it. And I like made it the background on my phone to encourage myself. And then here at Clemson, I kind of mentioned it, they allow student athletes to do internships. So they create partnerships with organizations and businesses, and then they pay it. So the businesses have to pay for the intern at all. They pay it.
Interesting. I
It's
like that.
absolutely incredible. And so the student athletes get to have experience. And so I had someone from soccer, just wildly enough. And so we sat down and it really made me work through it and be like, you're doing this. And we kept on going back and forth. We talked about the recruiting process. She was actually from California. She transferred from Clemson to Purdue for her final year. And so we went through the transfer process and we went through NIL, and I was like,
oh my God, NIL. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Whole different world. And so with her walking through it with me and me walking through it with her, I was like, there is a lot of information to help with these athletes. And so I finally was like, okay, it's time to do. And this is 3 years later now. I was like, it's time to start doing something with this. And I have a dear friend who is the owner of the Movement Doctors, born and raised out here. They created like a boutique physical therapy company that treats Clemson athletes, treats mom and dads and easily. And her and I were talking about it, and she's like, I miss giving back to like young girls and stuff. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. And she's like, what do you mean? And so I explained the company to her, and I was like, this is what I'm starting. And I was like, and I think I want to focus on youth, on female athletes. And then I was like, and specifically youth ones, because the resources just aren't there for them. For college, depending on where you go, there are a lot of resources available. And so she was like, I would love to, like, I love and I miss the part of where I'm not running a business and I'm engaging with actual people and girls and giving back. And so with her being in physical therapy and me being on the research side and more of like the mental side, and with she didn't play college sports, having the athlete background, that's where the athlete mindset came from. And so it was a collaboration between SportPhD and the Movement Doctors, and it was over 2 days, so 2 different weekends to allow them to be able to like kind of plan for it and plan their games.
So these are workshops.
Yeah, the workshop. And so this one we titled The Athlete Mindset to really encapsulate both sides of what we do. And so the first day we went over sleep and nutrition. So I went over those 2 parts. And then she did a bunch of specific athlete tests. So she took a dynamometer and tested their quad strength and their hamstring strength to see if there's any asymmetries between them to help prevent injuries. Like, when you're in the weight room, this is why you need to be doing, squats, and gave them the activities to be able to make sure their body's healthy. They did force plate testing to show them, here's how well you're squatting. You're putting too much pressure on your right side, not as much, and make sure that from a structural standpoint, standpoint, that they were being able to recognize why and what to do in the weight room.
So I have a question though. So in college, would they be tested like this automatically?
No.
Are any athletic programs like incorporating this type of testing to get the best out of their athletes? I mean that's probably hard to say
I
because
would
they're
say probably your Big Five schools,
yeah,
universities. The ACC probably does it. SEC,
right.
Big West, love them. They gave me everything, but we didn't have anything
Oh,
like this.
by the way, I just had an assistant athletic director from the Big West Conference on, Angie Allen, a couple of weeks ago. Yes.
Amazing. We
Yes.
love the Big West. They're great. But it's D1, but Cal State Fullerton D1 is drastically different
Yeah, it is.
from Clemson
Yeah,
D1.
right.
And even like what our football program has versus what the other sports have is drastically different. So
Sure.
we didn't have anything like that. I know high schools don't have anything like
No.
that. And so it was a group of high school athletes. And so they got their specific scores and strength scores and activities to do to be able to deal with any asymmetries that they have. And so that was all day one. And then the second part of the workshop, we went to our local Lululemon and they hosted us because who doesn't love Lululemon
Exactly.
at
Exactly.
life? And we did understanding your why, because when the days get hard and you don't want to do it, that is what is going to get
Yes.
you through.
Yes.
And understanding, we went through intrinsic whys and extrinsic and the value of both of them. We did leadership. What is a leader? How do we lead? How do we lead if we don't have a captain's band? What does that look like? We did goal setting. So we talked about short-term goals and long-term goals and how do we work backwards for those long-term goals and how do we create short-term goals and achieve them, and what happens when something comes up that you didn't expect? What happens when you get hurt? How do we pivot? And then what else did we do? Oh, we did mentally preparing for games, and then we did mentally, which was one of the things I actually loved, I think the most talking about, was mentally decompressing after a game and how do you get the most out of your performance, because too often we end a game and we walk off the field and we don't talk to athletes about here's how to not beat yourself up because you made a mistake. And I joke about it now.
Or even in the process of the game itself.
Yes, so we talked about that too, like in the game. It's funny you say that because I'd never really thought about it until I was teaching it and I was talking to them about it. I was like, one of the hardest parts actually was when I just got subbed in a game. I was like, that's when I started thinking the most about what did I do wrong? Is it because I'm tired? Is it because I'm this? And then you have to go back in and perform again. And so we went through all of that, and it was just so fun to help them work through things that maybe they've thought about, maybe things people have said to them before, maybe things they've never heard of before. And here's how to, I always say SportPhD is to help them with all the other facets of being an athlete, because I can teach soccer girls how to shoot a diagonal ball 40 yards. I was like, let's work on all the other parts that make you an athlete and all the
And make
parts
you a better athlete and give you a better quality of life.
Yes. And so that's the fun part. As I was walking through a lot of this, I was like, and fun fact, you can use this for life.
Yes,
Fun
absolutely.
fact, this is going to assist you as you transition into finding a college or graduating afterwards. How do you make goals? How do you make a mistake at work and work through it? How do you prepare? I know when I had my Clemson interview, I still have a playlist. And I was like, you guys may have never thought about this, but take your playlist that you use for getting ready for games. And when you have a big presentation in class, it's kind of like what we were just saying when we were getting on.
Absolutely.
How do we get ready? I was like,
yes.
body remembers all of that. And there is a step process. Prepare yourself. And once we, get into rhythms and we have routine, our bodies love routine.
Yes, they do. And I also think our minds like routine too.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And so what's that routine and how do you bring it into other facets of your life?
So the girls that came to this workshop, were they local to the area around Clemson?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we recruited locally to Greenville.
Okay. And going forward, do you have another workshop planned?
Yes, I'm in the process of doing another workshop. Right now, a lot of seniors are going through the recruitment process for playing in college. And so I'm going to be creating a workshop where we work through what is D1, what is D2, what is D3, because I
I like
happened to
that.
mention it at the workshop. And one of the girls afterwards, like when we were still there, was like, I've never been told that D2 is an option. It was D1 or not.
Oh my God.
Happens so often, and it's within their own generations.
Yeah.
It's what they're hearing, not even their own parents, other parents are talking about. And I was like, we need to talk about this. We need to talk
I,
about,
I I think it's also a stigma. It's like
yes,
D1 is the only, like, it's the it thing to do.
yes. And
And yes, and you
it's
can
at a
only have,
detriment to
yeah,
them. I'm like, use your sport to get into a good college, to find what you want to do, to get a career, to play your sport if you want to have an instant family. There's so
right.
many good things about sports that if we're doing D1 or nothing, it's again, it's doing these young women and men a disservice to be
It
like,
is. It
failed if you're
is.
not D1, and they feel
Yes.
that. And I remember when I was coaching and my girls were going through the process, and I would say that, they'd be like, yeah, but so and so just posted that they want D1, and I have to post that I want
And
D1.
and they may never
Ugh.
get to play as a starter.
And that's what I talk to them about is, you have options. Look, you can
Yeah.
probably go D1. You may play every moment. That's great. But you also have to prepare. Do you want to be D1 and sit on the bench? Because what not no one, that's an aggressive statement. What a lot of people don't realize is that when you go into college, and you're on your club team, your travel team, you're probably one of the best. That's why you're looking at
Right.
college.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then you all come to college, and every single one of you was the best on that team. And it changes the dynamic, it changes your mindset. And so telling them, like, hey, that could be an option too. And you may sit on the bench. What are you going to do now? Do you
Yeah.
transfer? Do you transfer every year? And it's something I tell my students here is when I'm teaching, I'm like, look, I love communication. I can talk about what I study, what I research for hours. I love what I teach. I go, but college is so much more than that. It's teaching you how to listen to directions, how to ask
Mm.
questions, how to prioritize, how do you be a friend. It's the first time you're now creating your identity without your parents there, with
Exactly.
different cultures and identities around you. You get to create a life for yourself, and you're learning all of this in college. It's so
Mm.
much more. And when we're transferring every single year, you're losing
You
out on
don't.
building that,
I totally
and
agree.
again, that routine and that structure that is so important for us. You lose out on it. And what if you get hurt? It's the worst case
Mm.
scenario, but what if you get hurt? And I used to, before the transfer portal became what it was, I used to advise girls, be at a college that you want to be at, even if you get hurt, even if you
Yes.
can't play there anymore. Now it's a little different being able to put your name in a hat and
Right.
transfer. But now I recommend, like, transfer once, find that next school.
Yeah.
That's the case because you need to build stability. You need to learn how to, you're growing up in college. It's really
Mm.
difficult to grow up if you're moving every year, if you're finding
And
new.
and I also think the ability to transfer every single year, it also I think it doesn't teach you how to deal with adversity, how to, stick with a goal, you
Yes,
know?
help you learn how to be told that you're not good enough and work even
Yes.
harder.
Yes.
I mean,
Or
there's,
realize it yourself, and just because you didn't get what you wanted, you think you can go get it from somebody else.
and it's so sad, but the grass isn't always greener. That's why they then transfer again.
Most times it may not be.
And, and there's always situations where it's like you do need a transfer.
Yes. Yes, I agree
There
with
is,
that.
and I don't
Yes.
want to discredit really good decisions, but I can agree with you more. This idea of when things get hard, oh, I'll just find something new. To me,
Or
in a generation
or,
where that's just not life.
or if the money's better from another
Oh,
school.
that's a whole
That's
can of worms to
yes.
open up, which is just,
Yes.
I
Yes.
love, and I wish, I look back and I'm like, "Ah, I would have loved to have gotten paid for some of the things, but it is a whole nother
Yeah.
world of what we have done to these student athletes. And again, I think in so many ways it is a disservice to them. They're professionals now. I have football players in my class making more money than I make every year. And I'm like, and luckily I have the athlete background, so I'm like, I know how hard you work on the field. You're working that hard in my class, and I have a great relationship with them.
That's right.
But it is a weird world where they're now, and it's hard for them. It's difficult. They are
It's hard.
balancing
And I
money offers that no one at that age should be having to
no,
navigate.
no, and dealing with all the people around them that want that money too,
Yes.
and just, changing it changes, I think, the value of themselves in their head,
Yes.
and and I think there's repercussions. Look at college basketball. There have to be, repercussions on the NBA and pro teams overseas and the G League and all that. And there's just so much to that. How do people find out? Like, how are you marketing your workshops?
Right now, it's very organic, having, pushed it off for so many years and now really being like, this is something that it could be
Right.
something. Very organic. Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn with it, which is more so for the older adults since high school girls are not on LinkedIn.
Right.
And doing a lot of collaboration. So the collaboration with the movement doctors. I'm going to be collaborating a little bit more with Lululemon as well in Greenville. So they do a lot of local outreach and community and building workshops there.
Right.
They're fantastic as an organization and a company doing that. And then reaching out actually to a lot of high schools locally. And
Right.
luckily, there's so many coaches that it did better than I ever imagined it would have. I had very low expectations being the
Oh my
athlete, being like,
God.
this is nothing.
I would have thought, like, just like, I would have thought that any coach would be like, yes, help me make my athletes better. Help me help them.
Yes. And so, I mean, it was wild how many messages I got afterwards being like, you're still doing this, right? Like, I didn't see this in time. Can I please sign up my daughter? Can I please sign up my team? And me being like, yes, hold on. I still have a whole other job that I'm doing as well. And I need to be posting for this and I need to be, yes, I will get back to you. And so a lot of great feedback of just individuals who saw it organically, locally, and that are like, I want to be a part of that. I want my daughter to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And then wildly, a lot of coaches being like, do you do anything for male coaches coaching female athletes? And I was like, I can. I do. That would be
I'm writing that down
yeah.
now. Yes.
And so
Yes.
I'm currently building that out. It would be like a Zoom workshop, a couple of hours of here's the differences between girls and guys, and here's
Yeah.
here's similarities too. You don't need to walk on eggshells with girls, but you do need to. They need to know exactly what the expectations are. And
Yes.
I've
Yes.
always joked that with girls, guys have an intrinsic sense of pride. They do. They do a lot of things for themselves to be the best for themselves. I'm like, girls do. Some don't have it as much as others, but I'm like, but
Right.
girls want to impress you. Girls play for their coaches, for their teammates. Guys play for themselves. And you see it with girls. If you have a culture on your team where girls don't get along, they're not passing each other the ball. They will not want to be on the
That
same
is
team.
exactly right. You're exactly right.
I'm mad at so and so. I'm not giving it. Where guys are gonna be like, I don't like you, but you're the best one on the team. You're on my team now. I don't care. We'll fight it out afterwards. And so, how do you teach male coaches to navigate that, and why a culture in female sports is so important? And how do you get them to buy in as much as you've bought in? And how do you push them? Because girls can be pushed too, but also encourage them and support them and make them feel, as if you care. Because if you don't care, there's going to
Right.
be a lot of girls that are like, you don't care, I don't care. Sounds great. And so working through creating that right now for male coaches, and really be able to help both sides of youth
I
feel.
love that they reached out like that.
Yeah.
Our
Oh,
our
it's really cool.
Memphis has our girls soccer coach is also a man, and
Often are.
I can't even remember his name at the moment. It's one of those days, okay? But it is interesting because there is a difference between a man coaching girls and a man coaching boys. There is a difference in that, and I've had some basketball guys who have actually said they've ended up coaching women, and they're like, to us, it's much easier to coach
Oh,
women because
so many say that.
they're coachable.
Coachable. They go, they listen.
That's
They go,
right.
I say
That's
something
right.
and they listen. And I go,
They do.
yeah. What do you mean? And they're like, guys don't do that. And I'm like, what do
They
you
don't. They
mean?
don't do that. They
And
don't.
they're like, it's so funny. I hear that all the time from guy coaches. They go, I told you to do something, and they don't go, why? They don't say no. They just do it.
Just
And I go,
do it.
because again, it's just not all of them, but intrinsically we want to make you
Yes.
happy and we want to
Yeah.
be liked. And again, it's not every day. I don't need it. There's going to be a time where I'm going to be like, I don't like you. I don't like you right now. But overall, it is a slightly different communicative approach. And
Right,
if
it
you
is.
have a few tools in your tool bag to be able to approach female athletes in this way, everyone's goal is to play their best. They want to play their best. Everyone's goal is to win. You want to win, they want to win. And in what ways can we help you do that and achieve a goal, a common goal that you all have? And if that's learning how to talk to your athlete a little bit better to get them to play their best, like why would you not want to learn that? Why would you not
Exactly.
want to put that in your toolbox? Be
Exactly.
like, I know how when I pull them out because they're not playing well, I need to know which one of my athletes, and I've always said this specifically for females, being a female playing sports, there's the athletes that you know you should rip into and they're going to perform better. There's the athletes that I knew coaching, I need to put my arm around them, and getting into them wasn't going to help them at all. I was going to do more damage yelling at them that they messed up than anything else. All right, I'm going to put my arm around you and be like, hey, it's not your day today, is it? And they're gonna be like, nope. And I'm like, all right, what can we focus on instead? How do we pivot their mindset of, I can't hit the broadside of a barn, but I can play really good defense today. And so what are just some of those tools that you can help, I keep on saying young female athletes, but they transition into young women someday, understand themselves better, help coaches be able to encourage them and push them and challenge them better so that at the end of the day, they can do whatever they will with sports. They want to play in college, awesome. They want to play professionally, amazing. You just want to play club and be with your friends and then go out and have, a traditional college experience, awesome. Like I would say there's no wrong path. There's just different paths. And learning what those are and how to support that is I think really cool.
Okay, so website, where can people find out more about the sports
So
PhD
it's
and the athlete
sportphd.org because
.org.
.com is already taken and I can't find the person who took it. So if you took sportsphd.com, please give me a call. So it is sportphd.org. And then we do have an Instagram. It's sportphd as well. And yeah, I'm always looking for collaborations, always looking to talk to people. And I will always say if you're a female athlete who doesn't have the means, because obviously everything in life costs money, please reach out still. I've been there, I've done that, I understand that. And so I'm always willing to work with athletes that might not also have the ability to pay for it. That should never be a barrier, ever.
Exactly. I agree. I'm going to put all of the contact stuff. I'll put them in the show notes. And if you're watching the video, it's on the screen right now. I do have a couple of questions. What was your relationship with exercise after you retired?
Yeah. I feel so bad. I've brought my mom up so much, but my mom is just a wonderful.
No, we love mom. We love mom.
Yeah. She taught me from a very young age, especially with food, because it's such a big thing for females. How do you feel with what you're eating? How's it making you feel? And choosing based off of that. And so, I always feel better when I'm not eating McDonald's, but it was never off of the table.
Right.
It was never. And so I get McDonald's probably twice a year now because I always feel like crap afterwards, but I do love McDonald's. And I always text my mom. I'm like, thank you for never taking it off of the table for me. You just helped me recognize how I feel after eating McDonald's.
Exactly.
I don't feel great afterwards, so I'm not going to get it. But if I need it one day, go and get it. And it worked for me. And so exercise wise, I was the type of person where it was always feeling as well. It was, how do I feel when I wake up? And I feel better when I'm moving my body. I love walking. I've ran half marathons now. I always say I'm not a runner. I'm just really stubborn and I wanted to be. I will do this. I love Legree. I love Pilates now. I've realized.
Okay. Yeah. I saw that Legree and I had to go look it up. I'd never heard of it. So could you just give a summary of what it is?
Yes. Summary. Okay. You got mat Pilates. Wonderful. Incredible. Then you upgrade to reformer Pilates. You're on a machine.
Yes.
It moves. It's incredible. Then you upgrade one more time to Legree. And what Legree is, and if Legree ever watches this, I hope I do this correctly, it is isolating muscles, and actually you move really, really slow when you do it. So thinking of a lunge where you are on a table that moves, it's called a mega reformer, and you're going down into your lunge, and your goal is to do it as slow as possible and then come up as slow as possible. So your time under tension increases, and you do have like spring weight. So you're doing a little bit of body weight as well as like actual weight within the table. I love it because as someone who has had a serious back injury, who has had to work through things like that, because you're going slow and you're not rushing through it, you can make adjustments and you know exactly how you feel and you're able to kind of tune into your body a little bit. I will say there's a barrier of it's very expensive. And so I'll do it as long as I can, and I'll go for runs and do walks and stuff and do house weights. I keep on saying how fortunate I am. I've learned that my body's going to change after athletics. I've learned that there's going to be a time, I'm not a mom, but if I ever become a mom, my body's going to change again. And that's beautiful and wonderful. And our bodies are so incredible. And coming to peace with that, because afterwards, when I wasn't 125 pounds anymore and I couldn't get down, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm like, no.
Right.
You're not 21 anymore. You're in your 30s, and it's going to look different, and that's okay. And you're going to become a mom, and it's going to look different, and that's okay. And then you're going to get older.
That's right.
And it's going to look different, and that's okay, because our bodies are incredible. And I yell at my mom all the time if she ever says anything bad about herself. I'm like, that body has raised 4 children. It has, I was like, you be nice to that body. It has lived, sorry, Mom, I think you're 63. She's lived a very long time. And I'm like, and I love that body. That body's my best friend. Don't talk about my best friend like that. And so it helps me by being hard on her, like, your body too, right? Like, we talk so much harder to ourselves than we would ever talk to our friends. And so
we really do.
We really do. So I try to talk to myself now the way I would talk to my mom, because I'm going to be her someday. And I'm like, and she always used to say, you beat your body up and then you look back in 5 years and be like, I wish I would have had that body and I hated it then.
Yeah.
And then you hate your body at that moment and it's 5 years and you're like, I would do anything for that body again. And I realized I didn't want to just continuously look back on my life and be like, I wish I liked my body then and hate in the moment. And then 5 years be like, oh. And I was like, how amazing would it be to look back and be like, I loved my body. Like, that was fun. Look at all we did. We traveled. We did no sleep. We, walked. We did all of these things with our body. That's awesome. And so have really worked on my mindset, because I will be the first to say it was not always good. Of what do I want to remember, and whatever you're going to remember, you get to choose. You get to choose how you remember college soccer.
Absolutely.
You get to choose how you remember a program that you were in. You get to choose how you remember your body. No one else gets to tell you how to. You get to choose it. They can influence it, but you get to choose how you look back and remember things. And I want to remember it being like, good job, body. Well done.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, quick question. If you could sit down with your 9-year-old self.
Oh, you're going to make me cry.
What would you say to her? 9-year-old Kishi, what would you tell her?
Feel my heart being like, oh God.
This is actually, I started off my podcast originally just throwing this in at the last moment. And it always seems like to be the hardest question for people to kind of think about.
One, you're beautiful. Like, inside and out.
Yes.
And I always tell people that now when I meet them and I get to know them. I'm like, I hope you know how beautiful you are, like, inside and out. Both of them. And I think
love that.
Beauty on the inside makes you even more beautiful on the outside. But I remember I didn't look the same as my friends, and I didn't, and I was so hard on myself. All my friends were blonde hair. My whole family's actually blonde hair, blue eyed. All my friends were blonde hair, blue eyed. I was the oddball out, and that doesn't do well for a 9-year-old.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
I would have friends over, and I looked like the one that was hanging out with a different family. And they were all, twig skinny. I've always had a body. And so, 1, you're beautiful inside and out. And 2, I actually have three. Two, you'll be okay.
Mm,
You'll be okay.
yes.
Life has a way of working out. My mom would always tell me that. I didn't understand it at 9. Um, she's a very big of like, how does it make you feel? So every point in my life when I was trying to find a master's or a PhD program, even Clemson,
Right.
she would come with me and we would stand on the campus and be like, how does it make you feel? How do you feel being here? And I loved that. I love this idea that we can feel things. So you'll be okay. You'll feel it someday. There's been moments where, I think everyone should find the moments where you pause for the good moments.
Yes.
You walk
Yes.
outside.
Absolutely.
It's so weird to explain, but like there's a light breeze and the sun or whatever it is, and you just pause and you're like, it's all right. We're gonna be
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
'Cause there's a lot of hard moments, and so when you pause on the good ones, it really, really makes it worthwhile. And then the third one is, I had it, now I've lost it. Um, you can go through really hard things. You can
I love that.
you can
We forget how,
you forget.
or we don't give ourselves credit enough for how we can deal with things.
And it's not going to be easy. It's not. It's going to be really, really hard some days. And the recognizing that you have a rational side of your brain and an irrational side of your brain, and sometimes they are going to be fighting with each other, and that is normal, and you're not alone. You're not alone to be going through a really, really hard situation or time. And sometimes it's like, I'm supposed to be happy right now. I remember one of the, and I don't mean to like bring this at the very end, but like one of the hardest days of my entire life was when I received an award for my PhD. And I was alone afterwards, and the rational and irrational side just started battling, and I couldn't stop the irrational thoughts.
What was the irrational thoughts? What were the
Uh,
irrational thoughts?
you didn't actually deserve it. This was just like, they didn't have anyone else to
Yes.
give the award to, which they did. You're not doing enough. You got the job and you didn't deserve the job. I mean, all of the weird things that
I
are,
hear that so much though. I really do from women. I hear that. I
yeah,
hear
and
that.
it's
And
so,
I'm going to be honest. I felt that way at times too.
yeah. And again, I won an award. Like, I should be so happy right now. And that irrational side, and I sat in my office and I was just like, I cried. And I was like, what are you doing this for? Just quit right now. All of it's fake. And no, 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 no. And I luckily had a friend that I called, and she was like, I didn't know how to explain it. And she's like, your irrational side and your rational
Yeah.
side are fighting each other now.
Well,
And
and it's also, it's that imposter syndrome that I think
yes,
women
oh,
experience so much of.
so much. I actually just talked to my students about that today, of this imposter syndrome, and it's real, and it is something we have to work through.
And it's interesting. I did a poll on LinkedIn, and it was about like what it was directed at women leaders, and I listed imposter syndrome was one of those, or marketing yourself was another option. And I was like, which one of these do you have the hardest time with? And imposter syndrome had the most. And I got people answering that poll that didn't even like comment on my posts or anything, like
I
never.
get that. Hmm.
And they were like heads of universities, like they were high up positions. And I was like, wow. But when I was in Houston working with the engineers and other professionals there, that was also a lot of it was the imposter syndrome.
So,
That even with degrees and experience,
and you've
people,
done it, and
yes, people still think like I don't deserve this, or this is not real, or they didn't have anybody else to hire, like all kinds of things.
it's wild. And like with the marketing yourself, I think that's been my hardest part with Sport
It
PhD.
is.
And it
Yeah.
has been something that I've been encouraged with. I have really good guy friends who they're so good at posting every week, everything. They just, if
Yes.
it fails, it fails. And I kind of mentioned it in my LinkedIn post that I sat on it because I wasn't ready for failure yet. I wasn't in a place where if it failed that I'd be like, it's okay, try again. And I am now. I'm like, let's fail. Let's fail with that post. Let's not have anyone see it.
Failing is the only way to learn. Like, I
It's
mean, it's not the only way to
but
learn,
it's a great way.
but it's a great way to learn. Like,
Great.
you got to test it. I mean, look at all the inventors in life. I don't think that the Wright brothers got off the
Works
beach
all
like,
over.
yeah.
It's true. You really do have to fail and be comfortable in the failure and recognize when you're not. Recognize when you're not okay with failure. Don't push yourself at that moment. That's not the time. You're gonna do more
Exactly.
damage. And I was lucky to recognize like it was not a time to fail a year ago. And now I'm like, let's fail. Let's do this. Let's
Yes.
let it crash and
Yes.
burn and learn from it and keep
That's right.
going because it's something you have to be your number one advocate, your number one fan. And it's great when other people, so thank you so much for seeing it and being like, that's actually pretty cool because it definitely helps. And then I always say, like, this is why we support other people too, is because so many
Exactly.
of us are going through the same feelings. And when you have
Yes.
one come up and you're like, that's actually really cool. And you're like, whoa, it is? Because I just ripped myself apart thinking that was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. And thank you so much. And you say it because you mean it, but you say it to them because if you don't say it to them, they're never going to hear it. And
I
so
get that. Yeah.
it's fun. I have a really good friend. He was so good at doing that to random people. They'd be wearing an outfit and he'd be like, you look great today. And they'd be like, thank you. And so often we don't say things to people we know, people we don't know. And we go to Instagram and if we don't get, I saw something that was like, if you don't get 150 likes on your Instagram post of your new outfit, you're upset. But if one person in real life told you that they liked your outfit, you would be on cloud nine. You'd be like, "Amazing."
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
hyping people up, supporting people, we all go through a lot of the same battles, whether we talk about it or not. I think it's important to talk about it. Um, Life is hard. We always say we need, when you're raising kids, it takes a village to raise kids. And I always joke, I'm like, it takes a
I
village for me to be an adult right now. Okay. I needed it as a kid. I need it even more now.
I love that. It takes a village to be an adult now.
Really.
I was just telling a friend of mine the other day, I said, I think as children, we got a bad PR thing about being an adult. I think, being an adult is not all it's cracked up to be. And I
Oh,
wish,
yes.
I think that they just kind of, gave us the bad rep when we were little. Because
Oh, it's so
definitely,
true.
it's definitely. So some quick, I have 5 rapid fire Q&As
Love it.
and then we'll
Okay.
be done. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Black.
Favorite, okay, favorite TV show or movie?
Peaky Blinders. Done and done. Every single time. Watch it. It's incredible.
What is it?
Peaky Blinders.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know what you're talking about. Okay. Go to hype song before a big moment.
Ooh, ooh. Oh my goodness. I have a whole playlist. I don't know one song.
I probably wouldn't even be able to remember the
I
title.
know I'm the worst. I listen to
Okay.
songs. I know every word, but I
How
don't
about
remember.
musician then? Like favorite musician?
Oh, right now it is a British musician. His name's Ren, and he is just so talented. He raps, he sings, he plays guitar, and he has this song about that inner battle within yourself, and I
Okay.
can do it, and then that inner voice being like, "You're not good enough." Ren, hands down.
Love that. One word friends would use to describe you.
Caring.
Okay. And what person would you most want to have dinner with for 1 hour, living or dead?
Ooh, Kobe Bryant.
You're the second person who said that.
I grew up watching him. He has one of my favorite quotes, and
Which is?
it's on. I can recite it. It's there's days where I show up in the arena and I don't have it. My knees hurt, my back hurts. I don't want to be there, but you don't capitulate to it. You embrace it, and you keep on going. And it's okay to show up to an arena. It's okay to show up on the day and be like, it's not the day today. And you don't let it win over. You keep working hard. You find something else to focus on that day. And I love that quote.
I
And
do love that.
I'd
I
love
do.
to know more about his mentality.
Thank you so much. That wraps up today's show.
Sandy,
Thank
I
you
think
so much. Thank you so much. I can't even tell you how much I've enjoyed this today.
thank
Um,
you. Appreciate
so
it.
for everybody out there, thank you for watching and listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.